The December 19th joint meeting of Murfreesboro City School Board and Rutherford County School Board to order. First thing on the agenda will be the pledge, led by Chairman Butch Campbell, Murfreesboro School Board.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'd like to thank our legislators for being here. It's always a privilege to have you here, the new ones and the old ones. So, we'd also like to thank Dr. Limiter Gilbert, Murfreesboro City Schools, Butch Campbell, Chairman, Murfreesboro City Schools and their board, Mr. Bill Spurlock, Director of Schools, Rutherford County, and our school board for being here. At this time, we're going to turn it over to Lisa Moore for the program.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, just make sure everybody's got their mics on, and just a quick reminder when you're speaking, if you would try to get one of the mics close to you. So, because everything is being televised, and sometimes it's very hard to hear people when you're watching the show afterwards if you're not speaking into a mic. So just echo what Mr. Chairman said. Thank you all for being here, and I especially too want to thank all of our county commissioners, our mayor, our city council people, all of our local elected officials. We're glad that you're here, and we hope that you're going to benefit and learn from some things this evening. So I'm just going to take a few quick minutes. I promised the chairman I would only take a few to kind of address the whole elephant in the room and talk for a minute about vouchers. I know some of our legislators feel like this has been beaten to death, and I understand and I appreciate that. I do think we have a lot of folks in the room, though, some newer elected officials that perhaps aren't quite as familiar with the whole voucher process and how it works. So I'd like to take just a couple minutes to go through some things. If I can get my, here we go. Before I talk about vouchers, I want to talk about our successful schools. I don't think there's anybody here in this room that doesn't know how very successful Murfreesboro City and Rutherford County schools are. Not only are we the fastest growing school districts in this state, without question, we have some of the top schools in the state. There's absolutely no question about it, and all of us should take a great deal of pride in that. I know I certainly do, even though I can't take credit, I take pride in it. You know, we've got some of the highest ACT scores in the state. We have the highest graduation rates, we have top-level award-winning magnet schools, and we have, without a doubt, some of the best CTE programs in the state. I mean, they're being nationally recognized, we're winning all kinds of awards, and we're being held up as the gold standard for the state of Tennessee. So, just to all of you that participate in this process and do everything that you do for our kids and to make the school system so great, I thank you. So now to the big elephant. Talk about voucher programs. I really just wanted to try to communicate this evening a little bit about how the voucher programs, as they're usually designed, can impact our schools financially. First of all, vouchers, in my opinion, they really essentially abandon our public schools. They do drain critical dollars from the public schools, and they have no intention to get those dollars from public schools and pay for private schools for just a few students. Some of the studies of existing voucher programs show that the use of vouchers is rarely uniform throughout the system. So a lot of proponents of vouchers will say, well, it takes away the dollars and you can make up for it on economy of scale by cutting back on teachers or maintenance of effort or what have you. But unfortunately, that is usually not the case of how it really works. Vouchers will draw students from throughout the schools and districts, which result in really little savings, if any, in the cost of operations and maintenance. Local funding, of course, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so thankful we have our local funding bodies here, because in Rutherford County Commission, we know how hard you guys fight for us, and we know how hard it is to find the funding and come up with the money to fund a school system that's growing as fast as ours are, and for our city officials as well, certainly for the city schools. So our local funding provides a significant portion of the district's budget, and the only way to maintain the dollars that are going to be lost if these voucher programs go into effect is going to be one of two ways. It's going to be through tax increases in raising property taxes, or it's going to result in having to cut critical programs, excuse me. And also the concern that you do have usually private interest groups that are profiting from our tax dollars to run those voucher programs. So here are the numbers. It's just a very kind of short example, but I think it has some impact to really be able to look at the numbers and understand how it works. And I've used Rutherford County's numbers as an example. I'm sure Murfreesboro cities are probably going to be somewhere within the same range. Right now, Rutherford County Schools spends $8,643 per student per year. I might mention, too, that this is, I believe, close, if not over, $1,000 a year less than the state average. So we are not only doing better than so many of our fellow school systems across the state, we're doing better on less. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. So if you take the example, for instance, if you've got 20 students in a class, and you've got $172,000 funded in that class available for that year. So 2 students use vouchers and leave that class. You've got $17,200 in funds that are being taken away from that class. So that still doesn't leave any room to cut any maintenance or staff. So the question becomes, how does it get made up? So if you look at the example that I've given here, let's say you have 10 students leave each school on a voucher, on a public voucher. And that's if you look at a 2,000 plus high school here in Rutherford County, that's 0.5%. So I've tried to use what I feel like are fairly low estimates. So if you've got 10 students that leave each school on a voucher, let's say 2.5 from each high school grade. In 46 schools in the district, you've got 460 students at $8,643 a year, which is going to equal almost $4 million in dollars that are going to be pulled away from the district. So again, it just, the studies show from the states and the places that have run these voucher programs, the students don't leave in uniform groups. So losing these students does not do anything to reduce our operating costs, and you still have to have the same number of teachers, classrooms, bus routes, and schools to operate. So really the only thing that gets reduced is the money that we actually receive to run our systems. So then again, the question is, how will it get made up? And I hope that somebody might be able to share other ideas with me, and that's part of the design of this meeting. But, the only way we really see that those dollars can get made up are we're going to have to increase property taxes, or we're going to have to eliminate these nationally recognized award-winning CT and academic programs. And I don't think there's anyone in this room that would be in support of us doing that. It would be moving our schools backwards. So, thank you all very much, and with that, I'll turn it over to our director of schools.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Ms. Moore, for pointing that out. We're about $1,300 below the state average on our per pupil expenditure. Those of us in education know since 1983 we've gone through Nation at Risk, NCLB, Race to the Top, Common Core, and now we're under ESSA. Now, we've always had accountability, and we believe in accountability, and our teachers are doing a fabulous job of trying to adapt. Currently, when you look at vouchers, it generally starts out with the bottom 5% performing schools in your state. That started out in Indiana, same way. But if you look now, there's like 40% of all public schools in Indiana are being hurt by vouchers. Vouchers play on a different playing field than public schools. Vouchers provide to private schools. Private schools have an admission process. We do not have an admission process. We take all of our students. The admission process, they could say who can come and who can't come. And they also can say who has to leave, depending on discipline issues, depending on academic issues. So that selection process is a little bit different when you compare success in private schools as public schools. If you will, it's a cherry picking. You can get the best and the brightest. You know, one of the big issues that we face with vouchers also is the special ed population now. Now, they do not accept that. If a private school accepts federal money, they have to be held to the same accountability of all schools do. So they do not accept public money. You know, in the state of Tennessee, there's over 500 private schools. Most of them are parochial schools. The tuition can go anywhere from $55,000 up to or down to somewhere around $3,000 or $4,000. You know, your larger private schools, in the way that vouchers usually start out, they will not accept them. They won't. You know, that's just the amount of money that they would allocate would not even come anywhere near meeting that tuition. Also, I want to talk about something that's been bandied around about choice schools. Now, I'm going to be one of the first to tell you I believe in choice schools. We have choice schools. In Rutherford County schools, we have magnet schools. We have dual enrollment, where students can not only get high school credit, but they can also get college credit. We have the, dual credit, where they can get college and high school credit. We have IB program. We have AP program. We have we have an online, we're working with an online school. That's one of the things that we're going to be introducing in the next couple of years. For those students that are medically fragile or emotionally fragile, where they can complete their entire career online. We also have CTE courses. Some of our CTE courses, all of our CTE courses are aligned with some type of a career opportunity. And not only that, but also ability to get certification. So we do have choice schools, and we'll continue looking at that. One of the things that's encouraging about what I'm hearing from the governor-elect is in our career and technical education programs, knocking down some of the bureaucracy that comes out of the State Department so that we can provide opportunities for all kids. You know, one of the things that has occurred to us in the last 3 decades, maybe a little bit longer, is we feel like there's only one path of success for young people, and that's a 4-year degree. That's not true. There's multiple paths of success. Every child needs to graduate from high school and get some type of additional learning, if you will, either in a community college or perhaps maybe in a tech school, so they can acquire additional certifications. Vouchers start out with good intentions, but they don't always end. I would strongly encourage you, and I know you will do your due diligence, to do your research. Milwaukee's a good place to start. I think that back in the early 80s, they started with the voucher program. They've been off and on with it ever since. You know, what I see in a voucher is it is an attempt to put a Band-Aid over a gushing wound. We must address the problem. Money is never going to cover, it's not just about money, it's about doing the right thing. And I appreciate every one of you for being here tonight. I'll turn it over to Dr. Gilbert.
Let me reiterate how much we appreciate you being here. It's really important what you do. It's really important how you advocate. It's really important that you listen. So thank you for being here tonight. I just want to reiterate a couple things that Mr. Spurlock said. The playing field, I don't like to play on uneven playing fields. And I think when we have a school that can accept vouchers, but yet the entire school is not assessed, only those students who go into that school that are on vouchers, I have a problem with that, because our entire schools are assessed. So that is one thing that I think is really important for us when we start thinking about vouchers. If we're going to compare schools, let's compare schools. Let's just not compare the students, the few students who may be going into those schools. The other part that I have a problem with is the ability to say no to some of our students, and I think you mentioned the special ed students. If we're going to say all means all, then let's say all means all. So let's say that those students deserve to have the services that they have been having in the public schools. In my opinion, it's not okay for a parent to be able to say, I don't want these services, because that can happen for a multitude of reasons. And then finally, I'd like for us to think about the fact that the BEP is already outdated.
There is no funding for a human resource department. There is no funding for financial departments, and I think it's pretty difficult to run school systems without those two departments. There's minimal funding for things like RTI, and we know what that is, so I won't go into that. Minimal funding for any kind of behavioral and mental health issues. So if we're going to already have situations where we know we need funding and we don't have it, when we're talking about taking away funding from a system that already does not have enough funding, then I think we have a problem. If you look at our special needs numbers, they certainly are going up. If you look at the services schools are providing for society, they certainly are expanding. So for us to condone having money taken away from schools that serve all children, I think really gives us pause. But again, thank you for being here tonight.
Here and,
Thank you guys for having us out. I appreciate you guys hosting this event. I think last time we had something similar to this. We had the Commissioner McQueen here, and a lot of the information that we were able to get from that generated actually a report to us on validity that actually we were able to use when the Tea and Ready debacle occurred, and we were helping try to hold everybody harmless on that, and I was able to use that, what we generated from this type of meeting, to go to other legislators and to leadership and show them where they were not in line with what they had said. So I think it's important that we do have these type of meetings and be able to discuss this and see what we can get that comes out of this. I think that the concern that I've heard from you guys, obviously, if we're going to go through the different items here. The first was obviously vouchers, and I think that a lot of concern that I've heard from some school board members and other folks out there is some of the hirings that the new Governor-elect Lee has on his staff, and but as at this point right now, we don't have a Commissioner of Education. That's going to be up in the air, and what exactly they're going to put forth, if anything, if it's going to be part of his agenda. I don't have any knowledge of that. I don't know if any of my colleagues know if he's got any going to have that part of his agenda, but we're definitely willing to listen and hear what you guys have to say, and I'll pass it on to one of my other colleagues here.
Appreciate being here. I want to compliment Mr. Spurlock. I was at the new TCAT the other day, and you had a lot of the I think it's called ACE, Mr. Spurlock. I really appreciate the certificates, giving those young people encouragement, because like you say, a lot of kids may not want to be going to college. They may want to be a welder. They may want to be automotive tech. So that's something I'm proud of as a legislator, is to be able to help get that building here. Largest investment to Smyrna, other than Nissan. So we offer a lot of great things. We have a lot of great strides in education. I brought it this year, and it doesn't seem like it ever makes the press, but under Haslam's administration, I may disagree with the governor on some things, but when it comes to education, I think he's done a phenomenal job. The investment we've made in education, the investment we've made in teachers, the investment that we have made in just security this year. It wasn't a lot of money, but I believe it was 25 million additional funds. And so school safety is a high priority for me, just like it is for y'all. But going back on the vouchers, I mean, it's, nothing new. I know y'all's position on it. But I want to remind you, I see a lot of county commissioners sitting here. Raise your hand if you're a county commissioner. Raise your hand. Okay. These folks are charged with setting the tax rate. Charged with setting the tax rate. The school board members aren't. Okay. They're in the hot seat. And I've been in that seat under 8 years. It's a tough job when you've got to approve tax increases. We're growing at a phenomenal rate. One of the fastest growing counties in the nation, not just the state. I think the path that we're on is totally unsustainable. I don't think you can continue to have a population increase and then continue to have tax increases. I mean, I'm seeing things that I've never witnessed. I was born and raised here, in this county and smarter, went to these school systems. But one point I want to make with y'all is that you just said there's an increase in special ed students. Okay, and I've reminded y'all about this before. I've seen where a lady was arrested, a mother was arrested for a special ed child she had. I went to court with her. They wouldn't let me in court with her. Felt sorry for the lady, and I just wanted to hear about her situation. She says, I can't go get a doctor's note every time my son messes his pants or something happens. And it was constant. We had the special ed voucher bill that another school board took position and was against. My logic is this: you need every tool in the toolbox. Every tool in the toolbox. That special ed bill, my understanding, the county would have still retained 25% of those funds. 25% of those funds. Now, I had somebody tell me, they said, and I think of the world, this guy, I won't mention his name, I think I'm putting him down or anything, but he said, Mike, there's no choices for that lady, that mother. But why would you be against it if there's no choices for the lady? There should be choice, especially on the special ed. Who cares about that child more than that mother? I don't know what it's like to raise a special ed child, but I couldn't imagine having to work full time and then have that child to deal with. And he was a pretty good sized young man too. And my heart went out to that mother when I seen her get arrested. And I see a lot of lobbyists in Nashville, see a lot of liaisons, a lot of advocates. That woman didn't have an advocate. Didn't have an advocate. So when I see that stuff, I'm thinking there's a choice. There's a tool in the toolbox. Let's keep our options open. I understand, that y'all don't want to lose funding. I don't want to see the county lose funding. But I do know the path that we're on is unsustainable. It's unsustainable in higher ed. When I first brought up to Bob Corker, the tuition debt was $1 trillion. It was college kids with $1 trillion of tuition. Now it's $1,645 billion. In 5 short years, it's almost doubled. It's unsustainable. The model is unsustainable. But I appreciate y'all's passion for our kids and for our community.
Thanks. Appreciate you doing this tonight very much, and appreciate your commitment to our city and our county and the principals and the students and the families in this community. A lot of growth in Rutherford County comes with growing pains, and a lot of that's what you're talking about here tonight. So I've really only been a state senator for about 6 or 7 months, so I've still got a lot to learn in all of these areas. But when I ran for office, consistently said 3 things, and I still feel these still same things tonight in regards to education. One thing is I want to continue to support mom and dad first and where they want to send their kids. That's important to me, to make sure to support the parents, what they want to do. The second thing is, I said from the very beginning, and I've had coffee with Mr. Spurlock and Ms. Gilbert in the last 6 months and told them both, I very much want to work with Rutherford County school systems and Murfreesboro City school systems. But I also have got Bedford County school systems, Marshall County, Moore County, and Lincoln County. And they have got very, very different problems than you've got here. Every time I'm in Bedford County, the first thing that he reminds me there is, and I think I might have told Ms. Gilbert this, is he says, please quit taking my teachers. So many teachers are coming to Rutherford County. So it's such different systems. So I'm very committed to trying to work with the school systems here. I think it's important that we're your voice there. And the third thing I still feel is my mother was a school teacher for 35 years. And I very much remember her grading papers, and toward the end of when she got ready to retire, frustrated with the testing, and the kids were changing, and all the things that were going on in her situation. So I have a heart for teachers, I really do, and I want them to feel appreciated in this community, and I want them to make sure they got the resources they need to be able to be successful in their jobs as well. But I am thankful for this forum, and I haven't heard of any voucher legislation. I haven't seen any voucher legislation, but again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Again, thank you for having us. I apologize. I am going to have to slip out. I got double booked. But I did want to say, again, like Representative Terry said, there is not a commissioner of education that's been announced yet. What Governor-elect Lee has said on the campaign trail, and that's all we know currently, is what he said on the campaign trail, is he's looking at education savings accounts. They are different than vouchers. So I would encourage everyone here to research education savings accounts. As most of, I know our two superintendents know, we have education savings accounts that was passed in 2015 for special needs children here in the state of Tennessee. And so, of course, education savings accounts gives more options, and it will actually allow more parent choice if that is what Governor-elect Lee decides to do. Again, nothing has been final until we get a commissioner of education. I don't think a bill will be able to even be presented to the public until then, if there is going to be a bill. Again, all we know is what he said on the campaign trail, and I think that's what we have to go. Something that I know we always do take in consideration, every voucher bill, and again, I cannot speak for Governor-elect Lee, but we do take into account in the past when a voucher bill has been proposed, is to give, like Representative Sparks said, 25% to the school, because we realize that if a student is zoned to your school, you have an art teacher, you have a PE teacher, you have a cafeteria worker, you have an EA allotted for that student. So I do not know if Governor-elect Lee will be putting that in his, but the department realizes that is something that the school system suffers. I do not want to say a percentage because I do not know what the percentage would be, and no one truly knows. And Governor-elect Lee's not here, or any of his staff is here. But I feel that that is the fair thing, because I understand that you have to prepare for that student to be, because they're zoned to your school, whether they come or whether they don't. And in the past, 25% has been dedicated to that school that did not go with the child. So out of that 8,000 and something that you had up there, 25% would go to Murfreesboro City or Rutherford County under the past plans. And so, again, please contact me. Again, I apologize for stepping out, but if there's anything I can ever do for you, I'll do my closing statements. Please give me a call, contact me, and I'd love to, as I tell people, Starbucks, Just Love Coffee, and Panera Bread is my district office, so I will meet anybody anytime for coffee and discuss. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, before we move on, and we're on time crunch, we've got so many things we want to talk about tonight. But I do know, I think we may have a couple of my fellow board members that would like to still ask a question or speak for a moment on the voucher topic before we move on to our next subject. So, Mr. Sanders, go.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, legislators, for being here. I appreciate it. I've heard this story before. Mike Sparks told the story about the special needs. And I have a question, I guess, which is, and this is just for us to think about, I'm not sure how vouchers necessarily would have helped in that case. That's the first thing. I'm not sure how vouchers would have helped in that case. And in addition, vouchers may have been even a poorer choice, because private schools have the ability to discriminate as to who's in and who's out. So, speaking for myself and the community that I represent and the studies that I've read, I show disproportionately that vouchers go to serve not the neediest, but those that can more afford to send their children to private schools. Now, and I understand that we don't have a commissioner of education at this point. And I think I'll say what I want. I can't speak for all the board members, but what I'm looking for is for our legislators to say, as a representative, as a senator, my position is, I'm not pushing vouchers, or I think vouchers are a good idea. What happens is we're representing all of the kids. And I am the biggest proponent for school choice. And I'll give you an example. My mother decided, she made a choice. We lived in Nashville. She was going to send my brother to private school. It cost her money, but she paid it because that's what she wanted to do. He benefited. I went to public schools. We both benefited. However, what studies have shown, again and again and again and again, the studies that I've read, is that disproportionately, those members of society that vouchers are supposed to help with a leg up are not the ones that are selected for the few spots at some of these private and exclusive schools. But they generally go to those who can afford it more. Not only that, say one does get through, then there's the issue of school uniforms, school activities that have to be paid for, transportation. All of this falls to the family that's trying to send their child to a private school that the voucher is supposed to help cover. So not only are we taking money from the public school system and giving it to a private system that's probably already doing okay. I haven't heard Providence say that they're running out of money. But also, those students that don't necessarily have the money to get there, now they have to apply for more scholarships, find more ways just to fit in at a school that is private, that's supported by private funds. I'm never in support of taking public money and giving it to a private institution to do what the public already pays for. So my question is, what are your positions? Without knowing who the Commissioner of Education is going to be, that's what I'm looking for. If you can't answer, I do understand that.
I mean, I'll answer that first. I think most people in here know I'm pretty liberty-minded and usually fight for the individual, fight for the parents and for the students. And I'll tell you the same thing I told a member of Governor-elect's staff. You know, we constitutionally are required to support a free education. But also, state law requires you to turn your child over to education from age 6 to age 18. And from a liberty perspective and from a parent perspective, if that is failing that student, how do we support that student and those parents in that situation? So if there is a bill that allows us to have support the Constitution and provide a situation for parents and students to best utilize for their children, I'll take a look at it. I won't commit one way or the other, but you know, if I'm pro or for, but I will look at whatever comes forward because I'm for the student in that respect. And I have told that to his staff. Secondly, you talked about, and this is someone that, from a personal standpoint, the bill, I think it was the ESA bill that for special needs, there was a family that basically told me, I think it was $500 per month that they would get for a special needs child, and it would have made all the difference to them. Both their jobs were hit really hard in the economy, and they could not afford to take their child anywhere else, and they told me that they felt like the program that they were in had, they lost 2 years of their child's education and life, and that would have made a difference in them and given them a choice. And so I think it may be may disproportionately go to other folks, but in that instance, that was something that was fairly personal. And then as far as, I think the bill 3 years ago that came through, I think one of the stipulations on it was that any money that went had to cover everything. They didn't have to buy extra uniforms or anything else beyond that. I think it had to cover everything. But I did want to, while I've got on the mic here, one thing I wanted to reiterate that Senator White had said, maybe you guys can give me an answer on this. And it goes back to, she was talking about fixed costs and variable costs, and a portion of funds that would cover the fixed costs. But if you say you have 36 students in second grade and you have to have 2 teachers for that, how much more would it cost the school district if 4 students moved into that class or into that school? Can anybody, would it stay the same? Or is it, you know, your 8,600 is on average, but if you add 1 more student or 2 more students, does your cost go up more, or does that stay fixed at that?
It's common sense that it's going to go up. Well, if you add attendance, sorry.
Okay.
I think it's going to vary, and I'm certainly not the one to speak about this, but I think a lot of it's going to depend on that student. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the pupil-teacher ratio, what you're doing there. If you have a student who is a special needs student that needs a one-on-one EA, you have a student that's going to need speech and language and is flipping that. So you do have instances where one or two students are going to require additional personnel because of those particular needs. And so it's hard to answer that as far as how much it's going to cost, because if I'm hitting my limit in K3, one more student, I've got to hire another teacher. And again, if we have, and frequently we'll have students who move in, and it will require a one-on-one EA because there's some issue there, or it may require a special. We have nurses in every school, but I know I have some friends who are superintendents that don't have nurses in every school, and so it takes a medically fragile child coming in might require a nurse. So it really varies, Representative Terry, on that.
And then the converse on that would be if you had 44 students, you had to have 3 teachers, and say 5 students left. How much? And I know you can't give it, but if you can.
Right, but I think it's the same way though. I think it can tip. I mean, I think when you're talking, if you have 5 students that leave, and you're looking at when you think about what we're given, basically we're given about $5,000 a student from the state, and so that's not going to cover nearly what it costs to educate a child. So that's where I was talking about BEP already being a problem, and so to take those 4 students can be a tipping point, because you're still going to have all the requirements of the facilities. You're going to have the requirements of the music teacher. You're going to have the requirements of the special ed teacher. So all of those requirements are still going to be there. You might lose a teacher depending on where it is. The chances of that being 4 or 5 students in a particular grade level are really slim. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing is with the vouchers, what we're talking about here is we're talking that you may lose 1 or 2 students in a grade level, but that's not really going to impact. It will impact your funds you're getting in, but as far as the requirements that you have to have, it's not going to really impact that on personnel.
Appreciate the feedback. Thanks.
I mean, when I was on the county commission, I brought up online courses, and I'd get the deer in the headlight look from people. And that's the feedback that when I asked Bob Corker, again, when I say him, and that time the debt had increased $300 billion, he mentioned more online, more accessibility. But I just know how we're growing in this community, and it's totally unsustainable. Mayor Kitchen, he knows. He's going to be faced with a lot of challenges. I think we're in times you cannot continue to do the same old things you've always done, because you're going to get the same old results you've always gotten. I think Einstein even talked about that. So when it comes to options on the table, let's look at every option, whether it's solving healthcare, transportation, the opioid crisis. Look at every tool in the toolbox that we can do to solve some of these problems. And that's always been my position. I've kept an open mind on everything. And when I talked about online classes on the county commission, encouraging people, if somebody wanted to homeschool, give them the tools to homeschool. Support them to homeschool. It alleviates the overcrowding that you're facing. I got teachers that text me all the time. I'm looking at one now. That teacher telling me she's way overcrowded on her classrooms. She's way overcrowded. And when I'm hearing stories like that, and then I went to the rezoning meetings, bless y'all's hearts, with some of the issues y'all are dealing with Blackman, with Stewart's Creek, listen to those parents, and some of them were in tears. Some of them were crying, weren't they? Some of them were about crying. And then I mentioned, heard about how many apartments are coming in. Well, there's an issue right there. How do you address it? I don't know. Maybe get with the planning committee and say, hey, hold off on rezoning more apartments. I mean, that's
I offer that a fully funded BEP will be a step in that right direction. That's what I offer. I know for sure that would be a help. I do not know that vouchers would be a help to everybody, but I do know that a fully funded BEP would. Because again, as Dr. Gilbert stated, if you take 2 students out, you've taken that money away. But we're still required to take care as though we had, let's say, the difference is 27 to 29. We still have to prepare for 29 with only funding for less than 27 because the BEP is not funded. And it is, and I don't want to put too fine of a point on it, but it is laughable to say we'll let you retain 25% of these students that we're taking away, 25% of their dollars, when the dollars that we get already don't cover what it costs. So yes, something's going to have to happen, and
Those are
you may have
special
to look
ed.
at
Talk about special ed.
to find out
Children there.
when we're.
Your costs are higher on a special ed child than if you look at the ratio.
I understand it, but our general population is not special ed. I'm off of special ed.
But you just said that there's an increase in special ed.
I didn't say it, but there is. But either way, 25% to retain from students that leave on a voucher doesn't scratch the surface. And as you said, our county commissioners are going to be tasked with funding this. So I think our new mayor may want to have,
But it's not only our county commissioners, it's also our city council. And they have the job just like the county commissioners. And it's not an easy job, I'm sure.
And I appreciate y'all's feedback so much and report, because I do want to try to move on with the agenda. But I just want to make sure that none of my fellow school board members had anything else that they wanted to ask Brad on the actual subject of vouchers. I think we probably covered it pretty well. Okay, Ms. Sharp, I'm sorry.
Some of you don't know, I am originally from Memphis, and I think that those of you that are in education know that there's a problem in West Tennessee. And my fear, and I'm sure some of my fellow board members' fear, is that when we legislate in Middle Tennessee, we legislate for the entire state. So there's a lot of unintended consequences that our county will suffer when we're actually doing a good job and we have good results. So that's one thing I want you to be cognizant of when you do make your choices. Because we have our issues, every system does, but we're not broken. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, so if we can move along, we've got our next topic, talk about state testing and temporary. This was, and I know this has been on the top 5 hit parade for quite some time now, and we've had lots of conversations, and everybody has felt the pain on many different levels. But I think for this one, I really kind of wanted to hear some input from legislators, because I know I've had private conversations with Dr. Terry, for instance, where he's given some thoughts and ideas on the subject where we appreciate everything y'all have done. I know you struggled and worked really hard for us at the end of that last season when 10 Ready went upside down again and was definitely not ready. But we'd like for you to share any thoughts or feedback where you envision we're going this year and what you as legislators can do to help us get that problem fixed.
I guess you want to take it or? Okay. I think for Questar, I think our contract, I think they're going to put up bids for maybe next year, but again, not having a new commissioner, not knowing where, if Governor Lee's going to reevaluate the system, what plans he may have for that. We had, it wasn't just the online platform, there were problems with paper. We had some schools that had, they had their tests were not matched with the answer sheets. Some didn't have the boxes that they came in, they weren't correct. They were from other counties, so just because it was a paper versus being online, there were problems. And so one of the biggest issue I've had with this, with the format, and I think Commissioner McQueen finally came out, and it was in the newspaper a week or so ago, and admitted some of the failures that we've been hounding them on for years. And one of the issues is that I've always said we've been putting the cart before the horse. You know, if you're going to do a testing system, a platform, make sure it works in a few counties, then you take it statewide, and then it goes live. Because you're putting teachers and students and their grades and where they're going to college all at risk on something that's not proven and is not valid. And so hopefully that's something that we'll be able to look at. I know that Speaker-elect Glenn Cassida, one of the things that he's trying to set up within the committee system is various more subcommittees within our committee system, and then tasking those subcommittees almost as an oversight or as a task force above and beyond just hearing the bills that come through that. So that's something I know that from the House side we'll be being more active on.
Sure. So I had been serving about a grand total of 4 days when the Tennessee Ready thing happened in Nashville. So I had teachers calling me from all over the district So I know we did two things. One is we passed the bill to try to do no harm and not to hold the teachers and the students in the schools accountable, which I found out later that presented a whole new set of problems, because then you had students that weren't taking the exam seriously because they didn't feel like it was going to be counted against them. And a second piece of legislation that was passed, that was actually carried by Senator Ketron, was the moratorium. There'll be no changes to the testing systems for at least 2 more years. So I just think from 30,000 feet, we need testing that we can depend on, that's fair, that's consistent, less of it. I mean, that's just a few days after I had been in office, I went to Bedford County, and I can't tell you how many teachers came to me and they all want to go back to paper and pencil. Everybody wants to go back to paper and pencil. I'm not sure that's the answer either. I'm not sure paper and pencil is the answer. You think in 2018 we could find a way to make the technology work. But we haven't. So, maybe is it a different testing system? I don't know if it's, do we need to do testing on different days? Do we need to do testing in different counties? I don't know. But clearly what we're doing is broken, and teachers are frustrated by it. So, I'm committed to working with my colleagues to let's make it better.
Yeah, I had a local judge call me this week, last week, really upset. He says, Mike, a friend of mine, left teaching. He says too much stress on her, and took a position being paid about half. I think we're over testing. That's my thoughts, and I appreciate Senator and Mayor Ketron, his bill, and I think we're putting too much. I think it's too much stress, not on the students, but the teachers as well. I'm hearing stories from teachers that saying some of these kids can't even speak English, and they're supposed to read this test, And I'm like, okay, how does that make sense? When I was growing up, we didn't have these challenges. We wasn't growing like we are now. We didn't have the ESL and all that y'all are seeing. I was in here last year when we had Commissioner McQueen in here, and I like Commissioner McQueen. She's a nice lady. And I think I was the only one that clapped for her. You know how you lead the clap? I was the only one that was clapping for her. It was lonely, okay? And anyway, she just left of the day, and I was hoping that that Speaker Beth Harwell may take her place. I don't think that's going to happen, not that I'm hearing, but I think a lot of Beth. But I do think that we're over-testing these teachers. I've had teachers approach me and say, couldn't we take the ACT and replace TN Ready? I'm told there's no way we can do that, but I think one thing that we all can agree on is the stress that we're putting on teachers. Had one just the other day tell me, Mike, I've seen people about pack up their stuff and be ready to go. I'm hearing that. And my cell phone, 525-3198. If any teacher wants to text me or call me, let me know their thoughts. 525-3198, and I'll challenge all the other elected officials to give out your cell number as well, not to put you on the spot. But I want the feedback. We need the feedback. I don't want to just hear from school board members. I want to hear from those parents that are raising special ed kids. I want to hear from those teachers. I mean, I could go on some things that teachers are telling me, but I'm not going to say anything at this meeting. They're stressed. They're stressed with legislature. They're stressed with administration. They're stressed with a lot of things. Put it that way. 525-3198. Text me. Let me know your thoughts.
I just one comment, if I could. I really do appreciate the stance that this delegation took against the testing to try to get it straightened out, to try to not make it punitive. I'm not sure that what resulted was what you all wanted. So I'm really grateful that we had those conversations, because I knew what you were trying to do, and that mattered. So I just want you to know that the fact that you try to make the testing less punitive, that is so necessary. The accountability is important, but accountability has become equated with a punitiveness that really is not helpful at all to anybody. And I know that last year you really worked to try to pull some of that off, so thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I would second that also, and because it did help our teachers. Now, of course, we know that federal guidelines says the schools had to be accountable, and the districts had to be accountable. But we do appreciate helping out our teachers. I'm sure they do also.
I will, you're welcome. I had a bill last year, and this goes back to teacher morale, and teachers being able to teach and do their job and not be so overburdened and overstressed. And it had bipartisan support, had leadership both sides that were co-sponsors, and I think it passed. I don't know that anybody voted against it, but that was for the new teachers that we're recruiting that have a 3-year preliminary license. If in the first 2 years they were evaluated at above or significantly above expectations, then they did not have to take, they were deemed to be qualified, not have to take that qualifying exam that took them away from preparing for their students that 3rd year. And I had another bill that for the 6-year license that if any 3-year period you met those criteria as well, then you would essentially be held harmless for the duration of that 6 years. And unfortunately, it got sent to summer study, and we talked about it this year, and I've got it redrafted, and I may be filing that and coming back that next year. So if we do continue down this road, that we have proven teachers that it will take a stress off of them, allow them to teach, allow our administrators or principals, if those students want to go in, or those teachers want to go into a more at-risk classroom or to a different grade, they're not penalized. And so it'll allow more flexibility, and I think it'd be better for our teachers and for our students and for the system. And you know, I'm trying to do everything I can. So yeah, any feedback you guys have, I'd love to have it.
Lisa, I would like to say something. Going forward, if you could keep teachers in mind when you're doing this test transparency, and I think that you all may have passed legislation. I don't know if you followed through with it or not, that you would be more transparent with the test, because I think districts who are preparing the scope and sequence, they're having a hard time doing that because we don't know, and teachers don't know. They're kind of like playing whack-a-mole when they're trying to teach to the curriculum, and they don't really even know what it is, and then they're held accountable at the end of the school year. So going forward, if you could help the teachers, the districts know what questions and what areas of study, curriculum that they need to teach.
I think there was a bill that we had that passed a few years ago that allowed more transparency in the test, but in order for a test to be valid, there has to be a certain set of questions that aren't public, and it's something that they basically internally test the test, and so that is what limits some of the transparency that we have. If you have too much transparency, then the test doesn't become valid.
I understand that.
If I could. And the only thing I'd say about that, Brian, is that I don't think anybody's expecting to get the questions on the test. What we want are the formatting, how it's formatted, so that teachers have an idea about how children are going to be expected to answer the question to give the information that's needed. Does that make sense? So even though we're not looking for the questions, we're looking for samples that we can show our kids and our teachers so that they know how to prepare students. Is that?
I understand, yeah.
And I'll be happy to talk to you about it another time.
Well, and if I'd like to comment on behalf of the teachers, when you talk about this whole testing debacle and all the issues that are coming along with it, we have truly done our teachers a disservice. And I know that I'm not saying anything that any of you don't know or recognize, but when you look at the last topic that we've got on our agenda for tonight, teacher shortage, all of those kind of things and all these things that are going on, whether it be with the testing issues and things are playing into that, the fact that not only are we having trouble retaining teachers, but obviously we're having a great deal of trouble recruiting them as well. So I do think it's imperative that we all listen to what our teachers have to say and take it into consideration as we move forward with the new administration and new legislation, because if we don't let them get back to teaching the way they need to teach, and I'm preaching, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty passionate about this, and take some of this testing pressure and this garbage off of them, we're never going to be able to solve the problem that we've got at the end of this agenda. So, okay, moving right along, growth and funding, and I think maybe our director of schools might maybe want to have some thoughts and kind of kick this off, because it's a large subject and it's got a lot of moving parts to it. So
I'm not going to let you go first, Nick. You went first, so go ahead. I think I've already addressed a lot. I think there just needs to be to understand the BEP is almost impossible. Almost impossible. But one thing is for sure, when you're drafting a budget and you're looking at what your needs are, and it would be nice, maybe, I don't really think it would be, if we said we weren't going to grow, but we are growing. And I don't think any of us really wants to be in a community that's not growing, because I can assure you that with some folks that are in other counties, they are hurting because they are not growing, and their children do not want to stay there, and they are moving to Murfreesboro, which is great for us, but we still have to deal with that growth. So I would just ask that you do look at the funding formula, get with our finance folks, and see what really is funded and what isn't funded, because I think there's the assumption that some things are funded when actually there is no funding for it, and then that other things are funded fully, but they are absolutely not. So that would be my request, is you all are very good to listen to us, and I would ask that when it comes to funding, if you'll talk with us about what we are really seeing, I think that might help a lot. And again, I think that for us in Rutherford County, growth is certainly a good thing, and it impacts us, and the growth money that we get is really important. I know there may be some discussion about smaller districts, and what is hurting them is they're losing students. I would ask, if that discussion does come up, that we make sure that we are not hurting, whatever the decisions are about that we're not hurting the districts that are growing, because I think that can happen sometimes in the discussion. So my request would just be the open communication about the funding.
Okay, our situation, we're adding over 1,100 students a year, so obviously that puts a strain on us in terms of building schools. Now, I heard about different ways and to address that, and not thinking the same old way. You know, an online academy, an online school is not going to, is not going to impact negatively enrollment. You're probably looking at, even a system our size with 46,000 students, probably max 150 a year, perhaps. So that's not going to help a whole lot. Now, does that mean we're not looking at other things? Obviously we are. What that does, that growth puts a strain on our local government. There's a lot of other things other than schools. We understand that, but education is the vital importance of everyone going forward. And it touches on many different things. So we're going to have some help, and I think perhaps maybe the commission brought it up the other night, on a different revenue stream term in Rutherford County other than property tax. We know growth does not pay for itself. If you take the mean of the property tax in Rutherford County, it's going to come anywhere near what we get. So what I say is, if we could do something to help our commissioners, our funding body, and our schools to loosen up something that we can increase another revenue stream other than property tax.
Your mayor's right here, and I put him on the spot, but there's not that many options out there, are there? There's not. I know that y'all look at ways to keep your costs down as much as you can, and there's not that many options. I mean, it's a tough issue. And it's going to be tough on them county commissioners. I watched a meeting a few months ago with some county commissioners, and they kind of got me tickled because they were talking about the growth. They were talking about potential coming tax increases. I've got full faith in our mayor right here, and he's the most experienced guy in this county, and I'm saying this with all due respect. If there's a guy that can handle the challenge, it's our mayor. But boy, it's going to be tough to handle those challenges. But how many years are you on the county commission? 16, 8, and then state? Yeah. And so it's going to be tough. But you got to have these discussions, just like we're doing here tonight, and look at, like I say, every tool in the toolbox. Tough choices you got to face. I mean, just like on this rezoning and stuff with those students at Blackman, those students at Stewart's Creek, and some tough choices to make.
just follow up with I think what I might as well go ahead and spell it out. Impact fees, we're limited, but the state legislates that on what we can do. So I'm assuming if it's legislated, it can be amended. Is that correct? If the votes are there, in order to increase our impact fees. One of the things that was pointed out to me last year, which I found pretty interesting, is that it costs more for a homeowner, the contractor, to tap onto a sewer tap than that we're paying in impact fees.
From what I've looked at, I mean, you already know this, but the BEP formula is just exceedingly complex. 46 different components to it. It's so complex. I mean, I would definitely be open to looking at how the formula is put in place. I'd be more willing to look at how impact fees and play into this. I do know this: Rutherford County and Murfreesboro City Schools are the envy of everybody else that I represent in these other counties. They are the envy. They wish so bad that they had our problems here. So, but I'm definitely willing to look at some different ways to try to get funding if it can justify impact fees.
To reiterate what they have said and what you guys have said, the BEP formula obviously being complex, it also needs to be updated. With the new committee system that Speaker-elect Cassida is doing, that's one of the things that they're going to be looking at is the BEP formula and what changes can be made within that. Additionally, I do know that there is some legislation, potential legislation, talk legislation out there of doing a growth fund or for rapidly growing counties outside or in addition to the BEP formula for like us and for Williamson County, other counties like that are growing at a rapid pace. So those are some things that I know that are being looked at this coming session.
Has the BEP program been updated since its passage in '92 that you know of very much?
2007
was the last time it was updated?
Yeah, not when I've been in office.
Right. Senator Kitchen, Mayor? Oh, that came into effect in '92. That's a long time, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And we've changed a lot since then.
No. Well, and you, Brian, you and Shane both and others have been involved in the health industry and just in Murfreesboro City schools. We are funded for 2.79 nurses. We have 12 schools. We have to have a nurse in every school. So other than 2.79, we are funding the rest of them. And you got to have those nurses because we were talking about vouchers and the special needs students. You know, they're in every school. And so you've almost got to have that nurse in every school to take care of those special needs and health related and other things as well. So that would just be one part of the BEP. I had the figures at home and I left them on what it was costing Murfreesboro City for the nurses. Because after the funding, then I think we only get 76% of what's sent to us or allotted to us, something like that. Anyway, I would encourage the BEP to be revamped.
If I could say one other thing, you know, the best thing that can change about the BEP is that it's fully funded, of course. But it's frustrating on an educator's end and school board members. You know, we talk about BEP, how we're not funded. We're required to have certain things that we have to pay for because we don't have the money. The state, the federal government doesn't give us the money to pay for it, right? We talk about vouchers taking away money from schools, and you've all admittedly said that we have a hard road ahead trying to get everything funded. Vouchers are going to be taking money away from public schools. But it's not just schools in growing counties. It's schools everywhere in the state. So even these smaller counties and smaller districts that you're talking about, vouchers are going to hurt them, BEP hurts them, because they're also having to fund things that they are not getting the money for. Does that make sense?
If I may, just a follow-up comment on Mr. Campbell's remarks about the nurses, because I did have the ability to sit in on several sessions this last legislative season where there were several presentations made about school nurses. And when you talk about the demand on our nurses and the lack that we have of them because of the funding, it's become really significant, of course, with the federal legislation that's on us as far as the things that we are required to do for special needs students, and I don't want that to be misunderstood. We absolutely need to be doing those things, and we need to be taking the best care that we possibly can of those special needs students. But with our limited number of nurses and the funding that we don't have to fund the ones we've got, am I right, already? And then I am hearing a lot of conversation about how we really, really need to fund to increase the ratio of nurses that we have in our school systems to begin with. So I do see that as being something that a lot of people believe needs to be strongly looked at in this next session and when it comes to the BEP funding part of that.
I keep thinking about this article that I read that is if we increase our per student funding investment by $583, we would be at the southeastern level of funding, and right now we're at 39th in the state. So just thinking about that while we're all talking about this, it's just $583 per student that we can get to the southeastern level, and then continue to strive for the national level. That'll be somebody else's job down the road.
I was just going to mention, I was talking to a state rep today, Kelly Kiesling. He's got 5 counties, 5 whole counties. He's in upper East Tennessee. And I was asking him, the growth and this and that. And he says, Mike, people are leaving our counties to move to y'all's area. He said, I'll probably pick up an entire county in his state rep district. And I was like, wow. I mean, but that just goes to show the growth that we're facing here. And it's really challenging. I go to bed thinking about these things. I mean, to be honest with you, I wake up thinking about these things. And I keep looking over at Mayor Kittren, because I know he's thinking about these things all the time and the pressure that he's got. It's not easy. I mean, somebody mentioned increasing the impact fee. It sounds great, but then you've got an affordable housing crisis right now. I mean, people paying $1,000, $1,200 for apartments. You increase that $1,500, then you just put people out of buying a home, or that. It sounds easy, but when you do that, there's a point of diminishing returns, and you're going to offset it somewhere else. So it's really difficult. And like those apartments, I guess that's affordable housing for a lot of people. Like Bob Dylan said, the times they are changing, and they certainly are changing. And it worries me. It worries me for my future grandkids. I don't have grandkids, but it worries me, because where are they going to live? How are they going to afford this? I had the opportunity to buy my first home at 22 years of age. Give God the glory for it. Not everybody has that opportunity. And it's going to be a rare time for a 22-year-old to buy a home in this county today. They'll probably be moving to Kelly Kiesling's district, you know what I mean, to find affordable housing,
Before we move on, anyone else that wanted to speak directly to the BEP funding or the funding in general?
I just want to say one thing. And I know that the one word that is a bad word to legislators, commissioners, city council folk, it's a bad word. That word is taxes. Nobody likes increasing taxes. I don't like it myself. However, I chose to live in Rutherford County and Murfreesboro specifically because of the quality of life that it affords. It is still a very affordable city, a very affordable county as places to live go. And as we increase and as our school systems are top notch, one thing that I've gotten myself accustomed to is that I like gourmet hamburgers. And I know if I want a gourmet hamburger, I cannot go to McDonald's and get it. That's a fact of life. If I want a gourmet hamburger, I've got to go to I won't name the place. But I'm willing to pay for it if I see the benefit. And sometimes it is a matter of how we sell what needs to happen. So I'm not a proponent of just raising taxes for the sake of raising taxes, but with growth comes pain. And it's just one of those things. So I think we have to, when you say look at everything, I think we have to. We have to be true about it, and it has to be one of those things that our concern for the betterment and the furtherance of our growth in our community outweighs our need or our desire to stay in office. It just has to be one of those hard choices that you make for the betterment of the community. And if we're community servants, just like we talk about the rezoning, nothing gets a community riled up more than rezoning schools. You will never see parents at a school board meeting until you talk about rezoning. They'll show up with signs and pitchforks. Yeah. But it's dear to their heart. So that's just one of the things. And even as school board members, we have to make tough choices, just as I have to make tough choices for my kids when they were growing up. They wanted to stay out until they felt like coming home. Sorry. Somebody's got to be the adult in the room. And oftentimes we have to make hard choices. And if our desire, I got into public service because I like to serve. And if I'm serving the people that I'm serving, I want what's best for them, not necessarily what's going to make me look best. Thank you.
Okay, and for the sake of time, because I know we had planned to make sure we adjourn by 8 o'clock, and we certainly want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we just go ahead and move on to the next topic, talk about school safety. Really just, I mean, we've made a lot of strides, and I think once again, Rutherford County and Murfreesboro City Schools have set that standard that we've talked about so much with our SRO program, and we truly are fortunate and blessed. You know, some new funding from the state this last year to enable us to do a few things, but you know, I think we all know that we still have a ways to go to make sure that neither of these school systems or any of our schools wind up being that headline in the news one day. And I know this is something that Director Spurlock and I know Dr. Gilbert too have worked on, and then I want to hear, I think we'd like to hear feedback from the legislators as to thoughts or ideas you might have as to how we can better improve it. I know our governor-elect has talked about being in support of arming teachers, and that's a very, very sensitive, hot topic right now, but you know, if anyone wants to proffer a thought or an opinion on any of this with school safety, but Director Spurlock, maybe you might kind of talk a little bit about some of the things I know you've been working on, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank our state legislators for being part of that, allocating that $25 million. I know it doesn't go very far, but it is very appreciative. I think we ended up with about 1.1 million in non-reoccurring and increasing the reoccurring costs, and it does help us a lot. And we do understand, you know, there's not a plethora of money just to spread around, and I think that was a statement that was made by you guys in allocating that, and we appreciate it. And I'm sure that there's still ongoing conversations on how we can increase that amount if we can. But that's some of the things we'll also take ownership on in our local too. Because if we can't have a safe, orderly environment, then we cannot have an educational atmosphere that's conducive for learning. So I appreciate you guys making that effort, and thank you for it on behalf of everyone.
Very much appreciated. Thank you so much for that. It really was tremendously helpful, and I think that it really made us look at our schools. I think the surveys that were done, they were very different, I think, probably than Mr. Spurlock and I would have designed, but I think that's very important. Just a couple of thoughts. I think that on the bigger picture, and I have mentioned this, I think, to each of you, but I want to reiterate it publicly. When I talk to superintendents across the state, the thing that I'm seeing is a real mental health concern. And so I think that's going to have to be addressed, and I think it's one of those things that is so big that it's hard to get started on it. But I would hope that the new Commissioner of Education, the Commissioner of Health, and all the commissioners can come together and really take a look at that, because it is something that that we need to do. But thank you very much for your support for the money for safety. That was very, very much appreciated.
I spoke to Representative Dave Byrd earlier today. He had the bill about arming the teachers, and I asked him if he was going to bring it up, and he didn't know. He was wanting to see how much the governor was hopefully funding it, but he kind of corrected me really quick. He says, 25 million really isn't a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, and his poor county didn't get much of those funds. I just got back from Memphis, went down there and toured the university down there, and hung out with some lawmakers down there, kind of knowing their area, talked to a new lawmaker, African-American lawmaker, and I was asking him, what's the big issue for you want to take on? He says mental health, and I was glad to hear him say that. And asked him what committees he wants to get on. He wanted to get on education, ag. I was a little surprised that I want to get on ag, being from Memphis, though. But one area that I wish that our culture could have a strong discussion about, not only is mental health, but what I call the fatherless epidemic, the fatherless. Lack of male role models sometimes, and brought it up to Bill Lee just the other night when he was in Murfreesboro. You know, you can't legislate a father to be involved in a kid's life. You can't do that. But what can you do? I mean, can you encourage more male school teachers, you know, to reach these kids? I know I had a lot of discipline from my Don Odom was one of them. Y'all have heard me share that story. Mr. Rakes was another one. And I believe in discipline. It helped me. You know, may not be a discussion y'all want to talk about here tonight, but is it scouting? Is it returning veterans that may, is there a way to encourage those guys to mentor these young men? Just left a drug coalition task force meeting earlier today, and I was proud to hear a guy who served in Iraq said he's starting a scout group. You know, when I was a kid, you had that. You don't see much of that. Mayor Kitchen was an Eagle Scout. A friend of mine just got promoted to colonel last week. Really proud of him, Jimmy Reed. And he had 5 sons, 4 of them were Eagle Scouts. I was really impressed with him, and really proud of him. And but I just think that as a culture, school board, state legislature, county commission, those are areas that we need to discuss. To be honest with you, I run a bill this year addressing the fatherless. In fact, Marvin back here made the video for me. He's out of Memphis. He's fixing to start the state capitol. It's #1 on YouTube. Just type in "Fatherless Epidemic." You'll see the bill I passed. You know what? You know how many stories the media wrote about it? 0. 0. You know why? Because it doesn't sell many papers. It doesn't sell no advertisement, you know. But this, as a culture, we've got to start addressing. The school violence, it doesn't come from little girls. It comes from young men. And whether it's mental health or something that they're dealing with, or drugs or alcohol, we've got to address it. Like I said, what Bob Dylan said, times are changing, and they are changing. It's really frightening, because I don't want to see a school shooting. I mean, I had Caleb Engel that stopped the shooting at Burnett Chapel with us just last month, and you wouldn't think right north of Laverne you had a shooting at a church, somebody killed in church. Who would have thought that? Right up the road had a Waffle House. Times are changing. Who would ever thought that? How do you address that? It's challenging, but I do think that these are areas that we've got to address. And I'll be honest with you, people can accuse me of preaching, bring it on, accuse me. I'm going to keep preaching. But we've got to address these things. And it breaks my heart when I see that young man is a hero, Caleb Engel. He was pistol whipped, had staples in his head. And I like something he said, and it goes back to your faith and family and freedom, the event you had with Governor Lee the other day. He said, not only pray for the victims, but pray for the shooter himself. Who says something like that? That young man, in my opinion, is a hero. And I don't know. I don't know how we address him, but I think that we've got to have a serious discussion. I may disagree with you on a couple of issues, but I like what Reagan said. He said, what was it? A true friend is not someone that you agree with 80% of the time, or you disagree with 20% of the time. But look at the areas that we agree on. And most of us want good schools. You want transparency. At least I want transparency. I want affordable housing. We all want these. Everybody in here wants these things. All of us do. But we've got to have a serious discussion. And this guy right here of the day, if y'all made it to his Faith, Family, Freedom event with Bill Lee, they were discussing some of the issues, weren't you? And I was really proud of this guy stepping up as a new senator. He's drinking from fire hose, but he stepped up and brought the next governor here to talk about some of these things. So proud of you, and I'll get off my bandwagon here.
Terry, I know you and I had a conversation the other day where we kind of got off on that whole the school safety and the topic of arming teachers, and you had some really interesting thoughts and perspectives. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share.
Yeah, with the amount of funds that we had last year, and I think Representative Sparks talked about Kelly Kiesling. He has 5 counties, and not one of his schools, I believe, has an SRO. And I think 60% don't have SROs or cannot afford SROs. And even with the amount of funding that we were able to put in last year, that the governor put in at the end into the budget, it was, I'm probably off on my numbers, but I want to say it was between $3,000 and $4,000 per SRO. It was didn't cover the cost, obviously. It was a very low amount. And there were some other states last year when this topic came up. There was a group of us that discussed this, and then Governor Haslam had his task force that he had, and one of the items that was discussed was, which is done in other states, I believe Texas and Missouri have this, which are called school marshals, kind of like an air marshal. And that would allow someone that may not just be an SRO at that school the entire time, but they may travel amongst other schools, and they would coordinate with a response team where they were going to be daily or where they were going to be at that hour. And so that was some way potentially that some of these schools or school districts from an affordable standpoint, as opposed to arming every teacher or anything along those lines, could still have be able to afford to have not be such a soft target by knowing that you do have some school marshals around. So that was something that was thrown out, and the governor did not go in that direction, and he did go with a little bit more for SROs. And I do believe that one of the a couple of legislators have talked about bringing back a bill this year to try to get more funding for the SROs and to expand that for this coming up year. So that will be something that we'll be looking at as well.
It's hard to beat a Buster's burger. I think it's critical that our students and our teachers feel safe in their schools. I mean, there's a reason you never hear about schools, any kind of shootings at Titans games and Predators games. That's because they have extensive security in place to protect people. So it's critical that our students and our teachers feel safe. So it actually says Rutherford County received $1.5 million in 2018 for security grants for non-recurring allocation, and $439,100 for the recurring allocation to one following. Right. So some money is going to be put toward one forward. I totally agree with your comments on mental health. I think it's underfunded, and I think it's causing problems all over the states, in schools and prisons and everywhere. So we have to definitely look at that and how it's impacting things. And I'll go back to what I said when I first started on things like arming teachers, and I want to defer to the school boards. You're close to this, and different school systems have different needs. And I think we need to rely on you to do what you think is best here. They may have a totally different situation in another county, and I won't think that they ought to be deferring to their school boards in those counties to do what they think is best, because I'm going to defer to you, what you think is best in that situation.
I was going to kind of suggest that, Senator, and to my knowledge, the Rutherford County School Board has never discussed this issue. I don't believe we have. And I don't know if the city has or not, if it's ever come up in open debate about arming teachers, but it's probably coming down the line somewhere. And I would just like to suggest that you do exactly what you just said. I would appreciate it that you give the school system a choice as to whether they want to arm the teachers or not. Now, I think it's a horrible idea, but I'm just one person, one vote, and I'm willing to listen to training and who gets on. I'm willing to listen to all that.
I just want to tell somebody in another county that's got a different situation.
Exactly.
What they can do. They need to work with their school boards like we're working with you.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I said just give the school board in that county a choice.
I think that's so critical too, and we appreciate the fact that you all recognize that your local bodies are here because, you know, we want to be here and we're here for the right reasons, and that we leave as much of the decision making at the local level as we can. And I'm going to go ahead and move this along because we're down to about 5 minutes, and we shouldn't have left our teachers for last. That certainly was not where they needed to be on the agenda. But again, we've already touched on it, that our teacher shortage, and it goes so much deeper than we can even cover in 5 minutes, I know. But we've got to do something to fix these issues for our teachers. We're losing them as fast as we can get them, and they're not coming out of the colleges in the numbers that they used to either. And I think the handwriting's on the wall as to why that's happening. We've discussed it in several different areas here tonight. So we have to figure out a way to let teachers teach again and want them to be passionate about their careers and work for our schools. So I just open that up for any thoughts that anybody might have.
I think there was an article the other day that came out talking about teacher morale, and it was and it was, the article was something along the lines of, we need to start looking at teacher morale. And I was like, no, that's we've some of us have actually been looking at that, but it's long past due, and that's one of the big problems that we've had. And you know, some of the things that are going on in healthcare, like episodes of care. That's a different topic, but the way that you're evaluated on that for physicians, it affects how their funding is, it affects how their morale is. Sometimes once, if it affects them a certain way, they're not going to see those patients. Same thing for teachers when they're in a situation to where, I mean, they're in it for the love of kids and to teach kids. They're not in it, they're not making, you know, huge sums of money off this, let's be honest. And so when you take that love away from what they're doing, what are they going to do? You know, that's where you lose them. So we have to put that back into the schools, and that has to be a focus when they're being evaluated. They have to know it's fair, consistent, and valid. They have to know that. They have to know that what they're doing is making a difference. They know that what people are saying to them when they're being evaluated, that it's truly on their merits and not on somebody else's. You know, for me, I'll always be their voice. So.
I think you said that very well. Fair, consistent, and valid. I think it's not just simply about the money. They need to feel they need to enjoy their jobs professionally. I mean, just really enjoy what they're doing. So.
You know, you've got two lobbying groups that we're paying for as taxpayers, TAS and Tennessee School Board Association. Make sure that you stay on those guys and gals to come talk to us about this. I've got the magazine right here, and Tennessee School Board Association Journal, and I remember what Ben Torres said. He said, Mike, you were the first one to call me on this testing, because I started getting texts and calls from people. But all these other issues, many times I don't ever hear from those lobbying groups. So those lobbying groups are kind of your arm to reach out to us. Another said this years ago, another lobbying group, I won't say the name because they'll get their feelings hurt. I had never met their advocate. Y'all know who I'm talking about. And I said, I never had a cup of coffee with you. Never come by the office. Don't even know who it is. And they finally changed lobbyists, got a different advocate. And I think they're trying, but you got to have a real conversation with people. You got to be able to go in the office and share these things. So everything that y'all brought up tonight on the evaluations, if that's an issue, make sure those folks are advocating for you. Hold them guys accountable, and girls, hold them accountable, okay? Many times I don't think they're there. Now, they may get their feelings hurt by saying that, but if we're paying for that as taxpayers, there needs to be accountability with those lobbying groups.
Well, we appreciate you, legislators, because we know that you guys are passionate about our teachers and that you recognize that this is an issue. So I guess all we can ask is that you continue to keep that first and foremost in your mind, because we can't continue to be the kind of exemplary school districts that we are without these wonderful teachers, and we need to be keeping them, and we need to be able to recruit them. So thank you. We're very close to time. I don't know if Director Gilbert or Spurlock, if you or either of our chairmen would like to say anything to wrap up this evening.
Only thing I'd like to say is I really appreciate you guys coming and listening. I thought it was a very helpful time, and everyone got to speak their mind. And we thank you for all you do, and we'll adhere to what you say. Get a hold of our lobbyists, if you will. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think a couple of things, and I'll be sending you some information, but I think we're going to have to start being positive about teaching. I think that whoever the new commissioner is, if that person could really start being positive about teaching, because we are facing a teacher shortage. And it's not so much the evaluation, although that's it, but when you're looking at test results coming out from June until December, it gets a little heavy. And so I think that we need to understand that teaching is the most important profession in the world, that no other profession exists without teachers, and until we start looking at education and talking about the positives that are happening instead of dwelling on the negatives and making it punitive, we're going to have a problem. So I appreciate very much your being here, and I know that you have a passion for education and for teaching, so thank you for listening.
The only thing I would say to kind of wrap up would be that education is a two-way street. Okay? We're going to call you, but we also would like for you to call us when issues come up that you have questions about, and let us give you, because sometimes it's easier to get in touch with me than it is me to get in touch with you. But I think any school board member or county commissioner or city council member or whatever, particularly those involved in education, would be more than happy to talk to you if you just took 5 minutes and dialed the phone or whatever you do nowadays. You don't dial, do you? Anyway, call.
Well, I've just got a short comment. If you remember last year, right at the end, we talked about what y'all passed in the Department of Education doing what you ask them to do. Just please keep your eye on them. Right.
I want to tack on one little thing there, really about what the two of you just said, and that is that I really would, I think, appreciate it. I think the system would work a whole lot better, and we could make a lot more progress if the Department of Education, this is a perfect opportunity here, because we're going to get a new director down there, and you are going to set up a relationship with them. Well, I'm going to remind you that they go to work 12 months of the year, and a lot of things happen between the time you all adjourn and then you come back into session. And they do not call us very often and ask the #1 school systems in the state of Tennessee our opinion. And I don't think that's very good. Ms. Moore here has asked me to do the obvious, and that is to thank our commissioners and our city council people, and indeed our audience for being here. And did you want to say anything else?
You covered it fine.
I did.
Mr. Chairman, you want to adjourn us?
We'll be adjourned.
Thank you.